I still remember the exact moment I realized I'd become a ghost in my own house. Not the house I grew up in. Not my childhood home. The house I bought. The house I pay for. The 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom property with a mountain view that my parents moved into 3 years ago, rent-free, because family is supposed to take care of each other. I was standing in my kitchen, well, their kitchen now, apparently, holding my 4-year-old daughter Emma's hand. She just asked for a snack. A simple request. Apple slices and peanut butter. The kind of thing any parent handles a dozen times a day. My mother was blocking the refrigerator. "This is getting ridiculous, Michael," she said, arms crossed like a bouncer outside a club. "You can't just waltz in here whenever you want and treat this place like it's yours." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my brain couldn't process what I was hearing. "Mom, it literally is mine. My name is on the deed." That's when my father walked in from the living room with the 75-inch TV I bought, sitting on the entertainment center I assembled, on the hardwood floors I refinished. "That's the problem right there," he said, pointing at me like I was a stranger who'd broken in. "That attitude. You think because you make good money, you can lord it over us. Well, newsflash, son, we raised you. We fed you. We put a roof over your head for 18 years. You don't get to act like some big shot now." Emma squeezed my hand tighter. She was 4. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. "Kids always do. Dad, I just came over to get Emma a snack before her dentist appointment. We've been living in that apartment for 3 months specifically so you and Mom could have space here." "Living in an apartment," my mother interrupted, her voice dripping with theatrical concern. "Meanwhile, you expect us to stay in this massive house all alone? It's too much space. Too much to maintain. Honestly, Michael, sometimes I think you moved out just to make us feel guilty." I'm going to say that again, because I want you to understand how completely insane that sentence was. My mother, living rent-free in my house, was suggesting that I moved out to make them feel guilty. "You know what?" my father added, his face reddening the way it always did when he worked himself up. "You and your kid are just freeloaders. Always coming over here, using our utilities, eating our food." "Your food." The words came out quieter than I intended. Dangerous quiet. "Dad, I transferred $1,500 into your account last week for groceries and utilities. The same amount I transfer every month. On top of paying the mortgage, and the property taxes, and the home insurance." "Oh, here we go," Mom said, rolling her eyes. "Mr. Moneybags wants a medal for taking care of his elderly parents." "You're 58 and 56, I wanted to scream. "You're not elderly. You're younger than half the people running marathons." But I didn't say that. Instead, I looked down at Emma, whose lower lip was trembling, and I made a decision. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you that snack somewhere else." As we walked toward the front door, my front door with my smart lock that I installed, my father called after me. "That's right, run away. Just like you always do when things get hard. Some man you turned out to be." I didn't respond. I just held my daughter's hand and walked out into the afternoon sun. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I'd walked through that door as the accommodating, guilty son who'd been bending over backward to prove he wasn't abandoning his parents. Because 3 days later, I'd discover something that would burn that old version of me to ashes. And what rose from those ashes? Let's just say my parents were about to learn a very expensive lesson about gratitude. I need to back up. Because if you're listening to this thinking I'm some ungrateful kid who got rich and forgot where he came from, you don't know the half of it. My name is Michael Chen. I'm 34 years old. I'm a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company. Not Silicon Valley money, but comfortable. More importantly, I'm a single father to the most incredible little girl in the world. Emma's mother, my ex-wife Rachel, Left when Emma was 18 months old. Not for another man. Not because of some dramatic betrayal. She just left. Decided motherhood wasn't for her. Signed over full custody, moved to Portland, and started a new life that didn't include the family she'd built. I'm not going to lie, those first few months were hell. I was working 60-hour weeks, trying to care for a toddler, drowning in daycare costs, and falling apart in ways I didn't even recognize until much later. That's when my parents stepped in. "Let us help," my mother had said, her eyes shining with what I thought was genuine concern. "We'll move closer. We can watch Emma while you work. You shouldn't have to do this alone." At the time, they were living in a small condo 2 hours away. My father had taken early retirement from his job at a logistics company. Mom had been a part-time bookkeeper but hadn't worked in years. They were living on Dad's pension and some savings, nothing extravagant but nothing desperate either. I was grateful. Genuinely, deeply grateful. But there was a problem with their plan. Their condo was too small for them to watch Emma regularly. My apartment was a one-bedroom. The logistics didn't work. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I'd been saving for years, living below my means, investing carefully, building toward a future I could give Emma. I had enough for a down payment on a real house. Not a mansion, but a solid family home in a good school district. What if we all lived together? I suggested during one of our weekly phone calls. I buy a house big enough for everyone. You two can have your own space, your own privacy. Emma gets her grandparents close by. I get reliable childcare. Everybody wins. The silence on the other end of the line lasted just long enough for me to feel my first whisper of doubt. "You'd do that?" my mother finally asked. "Of course. You're my parents. You're offering to upend your lives to help me raise my daughter. It's the least I can do." What I didn't say, what I didn't even admit to myself yet, was that there was guilt woven through every fiber of that offer. I was the only child. The one who'd always been just slightly not enough in their eyes. Not athletic enough for Dad. Not social enough for Mom. I got good grades, went to a good college, built a good career, but there was always this undercurrent of disappointment. Like I'd taken the safe route when they'd wanted me to be exceptional. When Rachel left, my mother's first response wasn't sympathy. It was, "Well, what did you expect? You were always so focused on work." When I struggled with Emma's sleep training, my father said, "See, this is why children need two parents. You can't do this alone." So yeah, there was guilt. The kind that makes you overcompensate. The kind that makes you sign a mortgage you're not entirely comfortable with because you're trying to prove something. We found the house 3 months later. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a big backyard for Emma, and most importantly, a separate entrance to what had been designed as an in-law suite. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a small kitchenette. Perfect for my parents. I emptied my savings for the down payment. Put it entirely in my name because my parents' credit wasn't great. Dad had made some bad business investments in his 40s that had left scars on their financial record. "Just temporary," Mom had said when we discussed it. "Once we sell the condo, we'll pay you back a chunk. Maybe even go in on the mortgage with you." That sounded fair. That sounded like a real plan. The condo sold 4 months after we moved into the house. They'd owned it outright, no mortgage. It sold for $170,000. I never saw a penny of that money. Not for the down payment. Not for the mortgage. Not for any of the furniture I'd bought to make their space comfortable. When I finally worked up the courage to ask about it, 6 months after the sale, my mother got defensive immediately. "We had expenses, Michael. The move wasn't free. We had to pay closing costs, realtor fees. And we're not getting any younger. We need that money for retirement." "But Mom, you said." "We said we'd try to help. We never promised anything. You can't hold us to some verbal agreement made in the heat of the moment. My father backed her up, as he always did. Besides, you make good money. What do you need our help for? This house is an investment for you. You'll make it all back when you sell. And there it was. The first time they reframed my house, that I paid for, as somehow equally theirs. Or maybe primarily theirs. But I swallowed it. Told myself they had a point about expenses. Told myself I was being petty for caring about money when they were giving me something more valuable. Their time with Emma. Except, were they? Don't get me wrong. They loved Emma. In their way. But watching her increasingly meant putting her in front of the TV while Mom browsed Facebook and Dad worked in the garage on projects that never got finished. Emma started coming to me with complaints. Grandma said I'm too noisy. Grandpa yelled at me for touching his tools. Can I go to daycare with the other kids? It's boring here. But I felt trapped. I was still working those long hours. Daycare costs for the hours I needed were astronomical. And every time I tried to address an issue with my parents, they'd flip it. We're doing you a favor, Michael. We gave up our independence to help you. Maybe if you were more grateful, Emma would be better behaved. That last one stung. The implication that Emma's completely normal 4-year-old behavior was my fault for being an inadequate parent. Still, I told myself it was working. Imperfect, but working. And then, about 6 months ago, things started to shift. My father started making comments about the house. How they'd chosen better landscaping plants. How they'd rearranged the furniture to be more functional. How their friends complimented their taste. My mother started referring to it as our house in conversations with relatives. They stopped using the in-law suite entrance and started coming and going through the main front door, the one that led directly into the space I'd mentally designated as mine and Emma's. When I worked from home, they'd interrupt constantly. Do you know where the scissors are? Can you help me figure out the thermostat? Emma wants to watch her show, but the TV isn't working. I felt like a guest. An inconvenient guest who was still somehow footing all the bills. Then came the incident that should have been my wake-up call, but I was still too deep in the guilt to see it. I came home from a particularly brutal day at work. We'd had a major system failure and I'd been up for 36 hours straight fixing it, and found that my parents had converted Emma's playroom into a craft room for my mother. Just moved all of Emma's toys into our bedroom without asking. When I confronted them, my mother actually looked offended. She barely uses that room anyway, and I needed a space for my quilting. Don't be selfish, Michael. Selfish? Mom, this is my daughter's. Your daughter has her own bedroom. She doesn't need 2 rooms. We're all sharing this house. You need to think about everyone, not just yourself. I moved Emma's toys back that night. My mother didn't speak to me for a week. But the real breaking point, the thing that sent me spiraling, was simpler and stupider than any of that. 3 months ago, Emma got invited to a birthday party for a girl in her pre-K class. One of those elaborate affairs at a bounce house place. Emma was so excited. The party was on a Saturday afternoon. I had to work that morning, emergency client meeting I couldn't miss, but I told Emma we'd go right after. I told my parents the plan. When I got home at 1 p.m., Emma was sobbing on the couch. The party had started at noon. We'd missed the first hour. Why didn't you take her? I asked my mother, trying to keep my voice level. We're not her parents, Michael. That's your job. We were watching her here at the house, like we always do. If you wanted us to drive her places, you should have said so. I did say so. I told you about the party 3 times this week. Well, we forgot. We're old. We forget things. Maybe if you wrote it down. It's in the family calendar. The one I specifically set up for things like this. My father, who'd been pretending to read the newspaper, finally looked up. Don't take that tone with your mother. She does enough for you. If you can't even manage your own daughter's schedule, that's on you. I took Emma to the party. She cried in the car about missing the cake cutting. When we got there, the other parents looked at us with that particular expression of pity reserved for single dads who can't get their shit together. I decided that night we needed our own space. I found a decent 2-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away. Not ideal, definitely a step down from the house, but it had something the house didn't have anymore: boundaries. I told my parents I was moving out but that they could stay in the house as long as they needed. Rent-free, just like before, but I'd continue paying all the bills. I just needed some separation. Some space to be Emma's dad without constantly being made to feel like I was doing it wrong. My mother cried. Actually cried. "So you're abandoning us," she said. "After everything we gave up for you." "I'm not abandoning anyone. You're staying in a 4-bedroom house that I'm paying for. I'm 10 minutes away. Emma can still visit whenever. It's not the same. What will people think? That we're so awful you had to move out." "What people, Mom?" But I already knew. The church friends she'd been inviting over more and more frequently. The neighbors she'd been chatting with over the fence. She'd built a little social circle around my house, and my leaving threatened whatever narrative she'd constructed. My father was more direct. "Fine. Leave. But don't expect us to bend over backward for you anymore. You want your freedom? You got it. Don't come crawling back when you realize how hard it is doing everything alone." I moved out the next week. And you know what? It was glorious. Emma and I had dance parties in the kitchen. We watched movies without someone complaining about the volume. We ate cereal for dinner sometimes because we could. We existed in our space without constantly being judged or interrupted or made to feel like we were the inconvenience. But I kept my promise. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes. I transferred money for groceries and household expenses. I came by to handle repairs and maintenance. And every time I visited, there was a new little thing that bothered me. The family photos I'd hung were taken down and replaced with pictures of just my parents and their friends. My mail was getting lost or opened by mistake. They'd given keys to neighbors without asking me. My father had converted my old home office into a workshop, filling it with expensive tools I knew damn well I hadn't bought. But I kept telling myself, they're your parents. They raised you. You owe them this. Suck it up. Until that day in the kitchen. That moment when my mother blocked the refrigerator and my father called us freeloaders. In my house. That I paid for. While we lived in a cramped apartment specifically to give them space. That was the moment something in me finally, decisively broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like ice cracking on a frozen lake. And 3 days later, that crack became a chasm. You ever have one of those moments where you learn something so unexpected, so completely outside your framework of reality, that your brain just stalls? Like a computer trying to process a command it doesn't have programming for? That's what happened when I opened my email on Thursday morning. I was at my apartment, getting Emma ready for pre-K, half focused on my laptop while she argued with herself about which shoes to wear. I'd been checking my bank accounts, a habit I developed when money got tight after Rachel left. Everything looked normal at first. Mortgage payment. Cleared. Utilities. Cleared. Grocery transfer to my parents. Cleared. Then I saw it. A notification from my homeowner's insurance. Policy cancellation notice. I actually said, "What?" out loud. Emma stopped mid-shoe negotiation to look at me. I clicked into the email. My insurance had been cancelled due to non-payment, which was impossible. I had it on autopay. Had for 3 years. I immediately called the insurance company. The representative was polite but firm. "Yes, Mr. Chin, your policy was cancelled. The automatic payment was declined due to a change in bank account information on file. We sent several notices to your mailing address before cancellation. What mailing address? She read it back to me. My house. The one my parents lived in. Ma'am, I never received those notices. And I never changed my bank information. Can you tell me when that change was made? Keys clicking on her end. Looks like May 14th. The change was made through our online portal using your login credentials. May 14th. 2 months ago. Right after I'd moved out. A cold feeling started spreading through my chest. Can you tell me what bank account the payment was supposed to go to? More clicking. I'm sorry, I can only see that it was changed, not the specific account details. But I can tell you the payment was declined because the account didn't have sufficient funds. I thanked her, hung up, and immediately logged into my insurance account. Changed my password. Checked the activity log. Someone had accessed my account 4 times. Always from my home address. Always during hours when I was at work. They changed my banking information to an account I didn't recognize. They'd also updated the mailing address to keep the insurance address as the house, so I wouldn't get physical notices at my apartment. My hands were shaking as I called my bank. I need to speak with someone about potential fraud on my account. The bank fraud specialist was extremely helpful. Within 20 minutes, she'd walked me through my recent account activity. Everything looked normal until she mentioned something that made my stomach drop. I do see some unusual activity with your authorized users. Authorized users? Yes, you have 2 people listed as authorized on your account. They were added, let's see, 4 years ago. Janet Chen and Robert Chin. My parents. I'd added them years ago in case of emergency. In case something happened to me and Emma needed to be taken care of. I'd completely forgotten about it. Can you tell me their account activity? She was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Chen, I think we need to move this to a formal fraud investigation. I'm seeing several large transfers that I need to verify with you. The next 30 minutes were a blur of dates, amounts, and authorizations I never gave. Here's what I learned. Starting 3 months ago, right when I moved out, my parents had been making transfers from my account to theirs. Small at first. 300 here. 500 there. Amounts that could be explained away as reimbursements or necessities. But in the last month, it had escalated. $1,500. $3,000. Another $2,000. In total, they'd moved just over $23,000 from my accounts to theirs. $23,000. I felt like I was underwater. Like the room was tilting. Mr. Chen? Are you still there? These weren't authorized, I heard myself say. None of these transfers were authorized. I understand. We'll begin the fraud investigation process immediately. In the meantime, I'm going to freeze their authorized access to your accounts and... Wait. A thought occurred to me, sharp and terrible. Can you tell me what they've been spending this money on? I can only see the activity on your account, not theirs. But I can tell you that several of the transfers had memo lines attached. Would you like me to read those? Yes. The first one, from 3 months ago, says, house expenses. The second, maintenance costs. Then there are several that say, reimbursement for groceries. Each one a justification. Each one a way to make their theft sound legitimate. But then the specialist said something that made everything worse. The most recent one, from last week, has a different memo. It says, European Vacation Fund. I'm going to let that sit with you for a second. While I was living in a cramped apartment with my daughter, paying their mortgage, their utilities, their groceries, transferring additional money every month for expenses, my parents were stealing from my accounts to fund a European vacation. I must have made some kind of sound because Emma came over and hugged my leg. "Daddy, you okay?" I crouched down, pulled her close. "Yeah, baby. Daddy's okay. Just some grown-up stuff." But I wasn't okay. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped something vital out. After I got off the phone with the bank, after I'd filed the fraud report, frozen their access, and changed every password I had, I sat on the couch and tried to process what I'd learned. My parents had been stealing from me for months. They'd canceled my insurance, potentially leaving me exposed to massive liability if something happened to the house. They'd been taking my mail, all those notices I never received. And they'd done it all while calling me ungrateful, while calling Emma and me freeloaders, while acting like they were the victims of my selfishness. The worst part? I started going through my credit card statements from the past few months. Remember how I said my father had expensive new tools in his workshop? I found the charges. My credit card. Over $4,000 worth of tools I never authorized. My mother's quilting supplies. Another $1,200 on my Amazon account. That 75-inch TV I thought I'd bought? I had bought it. But I bought it because my father said the old one broke. Except I found the broken TV in the garage, working perfectly fine, with a price tag from Facebook Marketplace. They'd sold my original TV and made me buy them an upgrade. It was everywhere. Once I started looking, I found it everywhere. Small thefts, deceptions, manipulations, death by 1,000 cuts, each one deniable on its own, but together forming a pattern of complete betrayal. I called my best friend Marcus. We've been tight since college. He's a lawyer, not the kind who handles family stuff, but smart as hell about everything. "Marcus, I need advice." I told him everything. The house, the money, the fraud, the insurance. He listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I love about him. He doesn't jump to conclusions. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Mike, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to really think about your answer." "Okay. What do you want to happen here?" I didn't have to think long. I want them out. I want my house back. And I want them to understand that what they did isn't okay. That they can't just use people like this. Even if it means pressing charges? The question hit harder than I expected. Pressing charges. Criminal charges. Against my own parents. "I don't know," I admitted. "Well, here's the thing," Marcus said, shifting into lawyer mode. "The bank's fraud investigation is going to move forward regardless of what you want. You've reported unauthorized transactions. They have a legal obligation to investigate. If they determine it's fraud, which it clearly is, they're going to refer it to law enforcement. So the decision might not even be mine." "Exactly. But here's what you can control. That house. It's yours. They're living there as your guests. In most states, that means they're tenants at will, even without a formal lease. You have every legal right to ask them to leave. They won't go peacefully, probably not, which means you'll need to start formal eviction proceedings. Given the circumstances, the fraud, the theft, you might be able to expedite it. But even so, you're looking at 30 to 60 days minimum. 2 months. 2 more months of knowing they were living in my house, surrounded by things I'd bought, probably planning their European vacation with my money. There's something else you need to consider, Marcus continued. If you're going to do this, really do this, you need to be prepared for the fallout. Your parents aren't going to accept responsibility. They're going to play victim. They're going to tell everyone who'll listen that you abandoned them, that you're a heartless son, that they gave up everything for you and this is how you repay them. They're already saying that. Right, but it's going to get worse. Extended family, church community, whoever they can reach. You need to be ready for that. I thought about my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, my cousin Jay. The family friends who'd known me since I was a kid. How many of them would believe my parents' version? How many would think I was the villain in this story? I don't care, I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. I'm done caring what they think. I'm done feeling guilty for existing. Emma deserves better than watching her father get walked over. She deserves to see that it's okay to have boundaries. That it's okay to say no. All right then. I could hear Marcus smiling. Let's burn it down. I decided not to call ahead. Not to warn them. I took a personal day from work the following Monday. Dropped Emma at daycare with extra snacks and her favorite stuffed rabbit. Kissed her forehead and promised we'd get ice cream later, no matter what. Then I drove to my house with a folder full of printouts. Bank statements. Credit card bills. Screenshots of Amazon orders. The insurance cancellation notice. Every piece of evidence I'd compiled over the weekend. I also had Marcus on speed dial and a small voice recorder in my pocket. Maryland is a two-party consent state for recording, but I wasn't planning to use anything in court. I just wanted a record. For me. So I couldn't gaslight myself later into thinking it wasn't as bad as I remembered. It was 10 a.m. when I pulled into the driveway. Both their cars were there. My mother's silver Honda and my father's pickup truck. The one I'd co-signed for 2 years ago that was still in my name because his credit wasn't good enough on his own. Even the damn truck was mine. I sat in my car for a full minute, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. This was it. The moment I stopped being the accommodating son and became, what? The enemy? The ungrateful child? The one who chose boundaries over blood? I grabbed my folder and walked to the front door. Used my key. Stepped inside. The house smelled like coffee and something baking. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows I'd picked out, across the floors I'd refinished, into the space I'd created. My space. That had been slowly stolen from me, one boundary violation at a time. My mother was in the kitchen, pulling muffins from the oven. She looked up when I walked in, surprise flickering across her face. Michael? What are you doing here? It's Monday morning. I took the day off. We need to talk. Something in my tone made her put the muffin tin down. About what? My father appeared from the hallway. Thought I heard someone. What's going on? I set the folder on the kitchen counter. Opened it. Pulled out the first bank statement. I want to talk about the $23,000 you stole from my accounts. The silence that followed was profound. My mother's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion. Recognition. Then something that looked almost like relief, like she was glad the game was finally over. But my father's reaction was different. Excuse me? You heard me. $23,000. Transferred from my accounts to yours over the past 3 months. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. That's ridiculous, he said, but his voice was too loud. Defensive. We've been using the money you gave us for household expenses, exactly like you told us to. I gave you $1,500 a month for groceries and utilities. This is on top of that. These are additional transfers. $1,500 here. $3,000 there. All with memo lines that you wrote, including one for a European vacation. My mother found her voice. Michael, you're being paranoid. Those transfers were for legitimate expenses. The house needed repairs. We had medical bills. Show me the receipts. What? Show me the receipts. For the repairs. For the medical bills. If these were legitimate expenses, you'll have documentation. They glanced at each other. A micro-expression of panic. We don't have to prove anything to you, my father said, his face reddening. This is insulting. We're your parents. You really think we'd steal from you? Yes, I said simply. Because you did. You also canceled my homeowner's insurance by accessing my online account without permission. You've been taking my mail. You've been making charges on my credit cards. And you've been lying about all of it. I pulled out more printouts, laid them out like evidence in a trial. $4,000 in tools, $1,200 in quilting supplies, a 75-inch TV to replace one that wasn't actually broken. Want me to keep going? My mother's eyes were welling up with tears. But these weren't sad tears. These were angry tears. Cornered animal tears. How dare you, she whispered. How dare you come into our home and accuse us of my home, Mom. This is my home that you live in, rent-free, while I pay every bill, while Emma and I live in an apartment to give you space, while you call us freeloaders for wanting a snack. We gave up everything for you, she shouted, and there it was, the card she always played. We left our home, our life, to help you raise your daughter because you couldn't handle it alone. And this is the thanks we get? Being treated like criminals. You didn't give up anything, I said, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. You sold your condo, kept all the money, moved into a house you don't pay for, eating food you don't buy, using utilities you don't cover. You gave up nothing. You upgraded. At my expense. My father stepped forward. For a second, I thought he might actually get physical. But he stopped a few feet away, trembling with rage. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, we used your money, because you owe us. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, put you through college. You didn't put me through college. I had scholarships and student loans that I'm still paying off. Gave you a foundation to build your life on. You think you'd be where you are without us? You'd be nothing. And yeah, we took some money. So what? It's the least you could do after everything we sacrificed. There it was. The truth. Finally. They didn't think it was theft. They thought it was owed. Did you ever stop to think, I said quietly, that if you'd just asked, I probably would have said yes? That if you'd come to me and said, hey, we'd really like to take a trip but we're short on money, I would have helped? That's the part one can't get past. You didn't ask. You just took. And then you made me feel guilty for existing in my own space. Because you were being ungrateful, my mother shouted. Walking around with that martyr complex, acting like you were doing us some big favor. Newsflash, Michael, we didn't need you. We were fine before you came along with your offers and your obligations. You needed us. And there was the other truth. She actually believed that. Okay, I said. I started gathering my printouts, putting them back in the folder. Here's what's going to happen. You have 60 days to move out. What? I'm formally ending your tenancy. I'll be filing eviction paperwork this afternoon. You have 60 days to find somewhere else to live. After that, if you're still here, the sheriff will remove you. My mother actually laughed. You can't evict us. We're not tenants. We're family. You're residents living in my property without a lease. In Maryland, that makes you tenants at will. I absolutely can evict you. And I am. Michael, be reasonable. Reasonable? I've been nothing but reasonable. I gave you a house, paid all your bills, supported you financially while you stole from me and called me ungrateful. I'm done being reasonable. My father's face had gone from red to purple. If you do this, you're done. You understand me? You're not our son anymore. You'll be dead to us. The words should have hurt more than they did. I think I've been dead to you for a while, Dad. You just kept the corpse around because it paid the bills. My mother started crying harder. Real tears now, mixing with the angry ones. Please don't do this. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have anywhere. You have $170,000 from selling your condo. That's more than enough for first month, last month, and security deposit somewhere. Hell, that's enough to buy a small place outright in a cheaper area. That money is for our retirement. Then retire somewhere you can afford. Because you can't afford to live here anymore. I walked toward the door. My father moved to block me. You walk out that door. Don't bother coming back. Don't call. Don't write. You're nothing to us. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never allowed myself to see before. He was small. Not physically, but emotionally, morally. He was a small man who'd spent his life making himself feel bigger by making others feel smaller. And I'd let him do it to me for 34 years. Okay, I said. I stepped around him and walked out. Got in my car. Started the engine. Backed out of the driveway. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over because my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't steer. I sat there in a random suburban street, gripping the steering wheel, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not breaking. Opening. Like a pressure release valve finally turning. I wasn't crying. I was just breathing. Really breathing. For what felt like the first time in years. I called Marcus. It's done, I said. How do you feel? I have no idea. That's normal. Give it time. Did you record anything? Yeah. Good. Save that file somewhere safe. And Mike, I'm proud of you, man. That took guts. After I hung up, I sat there a little longer. Watched a neighbor down the street mowing their lawn. A kid riding by on a bike. Normal suburban life continuing around me like my world hadn't just fundamentally shifted. Then I drove to the courthouse and filed the eviction paperwork. The clerk was professional, efficient. She'd clearly processed hundreds of these. To her, it was just another case number. To me, it was the end of one life and the tentative beginning of another. I picked Emma up from daycare early. Took her for that ice cream I'd promised. She got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles and talked excitedly about the butterfly they'd seen during outdoor playtime. She didn't ask why Daddy seemed quiet. She just held my hand a little tighter and offered me bites of her ice cream. Love you, Daddy, she said when I buckled her into her car seat. Love you too, Em. So much. That night, after I put her to bed, I sat on the couch in our small apartment and looked at my phone. 17 missed calls from my mother. 11 from my father. 8 text messages, each one escalating from pleading to angry to threatening. I didn't read them. Just blocked both numbers. Then I called my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, because I knew the Family Gossip Network would be activating soon and I wanted at least one person to hear my side first. Michael, I was just about to call you. Your mother phoned me in hysterics. She said you're evicting them? That can't be right. I took a breath. It's right. Let me tell you what's been happening. I told her everything. The money, the theft, the manipulation, the constant boundary violations. I didn't editorialize. Just facts. Linda was quiet for a long time after I finished. Oh, Michael. You believe me? Honey, I love my sister, but... She sighed. Your mom's been pulling stunts like this our whole lives. Did she ever tell you why she and your Uncle Dan don't speak anymore? She said he disrespected her. He loaned her $5,000 15 years ago. She never paid him back. When he asked about it, she said he was being greedy and that family shouldn't keep score. It destroyed their relationship. A puzzle piece clicked into place. Another one. Then another. There have been others, Linda continued. Friends who lent her money. People she borrowed from and never repaid. She's always got a justification. Always feels entitled to it. And your father enables it. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have believed us? When you first bought that house and told me they were moving in, I tried to warn you. I said, be careful, make sure you set boundaries. Do you remember what you said? I did. I said you didn't understand. That they changed. People don't change, honey. They just get better at hiding who they are. Or worse at it, depending on who's watching. We talked for another hour. She told me stories I'd never heard, patterns I'd been too close to see. By the end, I felt validated but also sad. Sad for all the years I'd wasted trying to earn love that was always conditional, always transactional. What are you going to do? She asked. Move forward. Get my house back. Raise my daughter. Build a life that isn't built on guilt. Good. And Michael? If you need anything, a place to stay, someone to watch Emma, anything, you call me. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Aunt Linda. After we hung up, I poured myself a whiskey. I don't drink much, but tonight felt like a whiskey night. I sat by the window and watched the city lights and thought about the life I'd been living. Always trying to be enough. Always falling short. Always apologizing for taking up space. That version of Michael was gone now, and I had 60 days to figure out who I'd be without him. You ever start something thinking it'll be hard but straightforward, only to discover you've actually opened a door to hell? That was my 60-day eviction period. The legal stuff was actually the easy part. Marcus connected me with a real estate attorney who specialized in landlord-tenant disputes. We had documentation. We had evidence of fraud. The case was airtight. My parents hired a lawyer too, paid for with my stolen money, I'm sure, but he didn't have much to work with. They were tenants at will. I'd followed proper notification procedures. They had no lease to protect them. The judge was sympathetic but firm. 60 days. Not negotiable. But that legal victory? It was just the opening bell. Because my parents decided if they were going down, they'd burn everything on the way. It started with the family campaign. Remember how I said they'd tell everyone I was the villain? I underestimated how thorough they'd be. My phone started blowing up from relatives I barely knew. Cousins twice removed. Family friends I hadn't seen since childhood. All of them with the same message. Slightly different packaging. How could you do this to your parents? They gave up everything for you. You're making them homeless. What would your grandmother think? That last one came from my cousin Jay, and it actually made me laugh. Our grandmother, my dad's mother, had been a tough-as-nails woman who took exactly zero shit from anyone. If she knew the full story, she'd have told them to get jobs and stop mooching. But she'd been dead for 5 years, so they could rewrite her opinions to suit their narrative. I responded to the first few messages with facts. Bank statements. Evidence of theft. The real story. You know what I learned? People don't want facts. They want drama. And ungrateful son evicts elderly parents is a much better story than man sets boundaries with thieves who happen to be his parents. After the 10th message calling me heartless, I stopped responding. Started blocking numbers. Let Marcus handle anyone who seemed like they might escalate legally. But the family pressure was nothing compared to what came next. My parents started. Well, the only word for it is sabotage. I'd given them 60 days to move out. I'd been clear that I expected them to maintain the property during that time. I even offered to help them pack, find a new place, whatever they needed. They responded by treating my house like a spite warehouse. It started small. The lawn stopped being mowed. Mail piled up. Maintenance I'd asked them to handle. Simple stuff like replacing air filters, cleaning gutters, just didn't happen. Then it got worse. I stopped by 2 weeks into the 60 days to check on things. I still had my key, obviously. Walked in and immediately knew something was wrong. The house smelled like garbage. Not metaphorically. Literally. I found trash bags piled in the garage. Weeks' worth. They'd just stopped taking them out to the curb. The kitchen was a disaster. Dirty dishes everywhere. Food rotting on counters. Fruit flies had taken up residence. In the living room, they'd rearranged all the furniture into this bizarre, non-functional configuration. The couch was facing the wall. The TV was unplugged and sitting on the floor. My coffee table had a crack down the middle that definitely wasn't there before. I found my father in his workshop. "Dad, what's going on?" "The house is not my problem anymore," he said without looking up from whatever he was doing. "You want us out? Fine. But we're not playing maid service for you while you force us into homelessness." "I'm not forcing you into homelessness. You have money. You have time to find a place. 60 days isn't enough time. Do you know how hard it is to find housing at our age? Landlords discriminate against seniors. Then buy something. You have enough for a down payment." "That's not how it works," he said, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold, calculating. "But you wouldn't understand. You've always had everything handed to you." I actually laughed. "Handed to me? I worked my ass off for everything I have. While you were retiring early and living off your pension, I was building a career. While you were. Get out of my workshop. It's my workshop. It's my house. Not for 60 more days. Until then, this is still our legal residence, and you're trespassing." He was technically right. I couldn't just kick them out before the eviction date, and he knew it. I left before I said something I'd regret. But it got worse. So much worse. A week later, I got a call from the Homeowners Association. There'd been complaints. My lawn was overgrown. There were violations. If I didn't address them within 10 days, I'd face fines. I called a lawn service. They came out, sent me pictures. The backyard looked like a jungle. And someone, I knew exactly who, had dumped motor oil in several spots, killing the grass in toxic-looking patches. The lawn service could fix it. For $800. I paid it. What choice did I have? Then came the repairs. I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, an older woman who'd always been kind to Emma. She sounded worried. "Michael, I don't want to overstep, but is everything okay at your house?" "What do you mean?" "Well, your father told me the plumbing was having major issues. He said you refused to fix it and that they've been without running water for days. He asked if they could use my bathroom. Of course I said yes, they're elderly, but I thought you should know." My blood went cold. "Mrs. Patterson, the plumbing is fine. At least, it was last time I checked. This is the first I'm hearing about any issue." Silence on her end. Oh my. Yeah. I drove over immediately. Let myself in. Went straight to the bathrooms. Everything was working fine. I ran every faucet. Flushed every toilet. Perfect water pressure. No leaks. No problems. But the towels were missing. So was the toilet paper. The bathroom looked deliberately staged to look broken. Cleaning supplies removed, shower curtain taken down, a bucket sitting in the tub for no reason. They were creating a narrative. For the neighbors. For anyone who'd listen. Poor elderly couple forced to live in squalor by their cruel son who won't fix basic necessities. I took pictures of everything. Sent them to Marcus. "They're building a case for why they shouldn't have to leave," he said when I called him. "Trying to show you're an unfit landlord. It won't work legally, but it'll work socially. They're destroying your reputation." "I don't care about my reputation. You should. You live in this community. Emma goes to school here. This kind of gossip sticks." He was right, but what could I do? Fight their lies with truth? I tried that with family. It didn't work. The next incident was the breaking point. I got a call from Emma's pre-K teacher, Ms. Rodriguez. Could I come in for a meeting? It was important. I took off work early, went to the school, sat in one of those tiny kid-sized chairs while Ms. Rodriguez looked at me with deep concern. Mr. Chen, I want to start by saying that Emma is a wonderful child. We love having her in class. But she's been saying some concerning things lately. About her grandparents. About her living situation. My stomach dropped. What kind of things? She told us that she's not allowed to visit her grandparents anymore. That you're making them leave their home. She's been asking other children if their daddies take houses away from people. I closed my eyes. Ms. Rodriguez, the situation is complicated. I'm sure it is. And I'm not here to judge. But I am mandated to report if I suspect a child is being exposed to instability or conflict that might affect their well-being. Are you reporting me? No, not yet. Because Emma seems happy and healthy overall. But I am asking you to be aware that she's processing something big. And whatever's happening with your parents, she's caught in the middle. After I left the school, I sat in my car and called my mother. Did you tell Emma that I'm taking your home away? I don't know what you're talking about. Mom. Her teacher just told me Emma's been upset at school, asking questions about me forcing you out. Did you talk to her about this? She asked where we were going to live. Was I supposed to lie? You were supposed to not put that on a 4-year-old. She doesn't need to know the details. She doesn't need to be weaponized in whatever game you're playing. Game? My mother's voice went shrill. This isn't a game, Michael. This is our life. You're destroying it, and yes, Emma should know what kind of person her father is. I hung up. That night, I sat Emma down, tried to explain in 4-year-old terms that sometimes grown-ups have disagreements. That grandma and grandpa were going to live somewhere else, but she'd still get to see them. That none of it was her fault. Are you a bad daddy? She asked, her eyes huge. What? No, honey. Why would you think that? Grandma said you were being mean, that you don't love them anymore. I pulled her into a hug, felt her little body against mine, and wanted to scream. I love you more than anything in the world, I whispered into her hair. And everything I do is to make sure you have a good life. Okay, Daddy. But I could tell she didn't understand. How could she? I barely understood it myself. The attacks kept coming. Someone, I'm betting my father, reported me to code enforcement for property violations. An inspector came out, found the garbage, the neglect, the oil-stained lawn. I got a citation, had to pay fines, had to hire cleaners to deal with the mess my parents were creating and refusing to clean. Every service call, every repair, every cleanup, it all came out of my pocket while they sat in my house, destroying it incrementally, building their martyr narrative. I started documenting everything. Photos, time-stamps, receipts, building my own evidence folder of their sabotage. But the worst part wasn't the money or the property damage or even the gossip. It was the realization that the people who raised me, who I'd loved and trusted and tried so hard to please, were willing to hurt their own granddaughter to get revenge on me. They were using Emma as a weapon, making her feel confused and guilty, poisoning her perception of her own father. And there was nothing I could do except wait out the 60 days and hope the damage wasn't permanent. 30 days in, I got a text from my mother. We need to talk, face to face, for Emma's sake. Every instinct I had screamed trap, but she'd said the magic words. For Emma's sake. I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. Marcus told me I was an idiot. They're going to try to manipulate you. You know that, right? Probably. But I have to try. For Emma. She's in the middle of this and I need to find some way to make it less toxic. Fine. But I'm making you promise something. Whatever they offer, whatever deal they propose, you don't agree to anything without running it by me first. Deal. The coffee shop meeting was exactly as awful as you'd imagine. They were already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table like they were the injured parties in some mediation. My mother had clearly been crying. Her eyes were red, tissues wadded in her hands. Strategic tears, I thought cynically. My father just looked angry. I got a coffee, needed something to do with my hands, and sat down across from them. Thank you for coming, my mother said. I know things have been difficult. That's one word for it. Michael, please. Let's not do this. Let's not be hostile. We need to talk about Emma. There it was. The Emma card. Okay, let's talk about Emma. Let's talk about how you've been telling her I'm a bad person. How you've made her feel guilty and confused about a situation she shouldn't even know the details of. We never said you were a bad person, my father interjected. Really? Because her teacher said Emma's been asking if daddies are supposed to take houses from people. Where do you think she got that idea? My mother dabbed at her eyes. She asked us what was happening. We told her the truth, that you were making us move. We didn't editorialize.